Hello, Forgers, and welcome to Metasight, a podcast where we discuss SolForge Fusion mechanics, meta, and maneuvers. I'm your host, Anque, and today we're continuing with our The Last Winter review. Today's faction is Uterra. This is the last of our factions, and our final episode will be on the Forgeborn. So, let's get into it. As always, we'll be reviewing our cards based on the 12, 18, 27 model. If you haven't watched previous videos, that is the Combat Tactician. So, Combat Tactician, it's a 12, 6/6 at level 1, gets your 12 stats. It is a 9/9 at level 2, get your 18 stats, and at level 3 it is it's a 13/14, gives you 27 stats. Why do we care about this? Well, this lets us know how the developers value the abilities that they give to their creatures. If you have a level 3 creature with a stats significantly below the 27 mark, it better have a really good ability to make up for that. Also, when we review the cards, you want to talk about how good is the card on an empty board, how good is it late in the game, early in the game, how does it progress. So all these are the factors that go into my review of the cards. So let's get into the Uterra cards from the last winter. We're going to start off with the holistic or non-forge creatures. First off, we have a few different cards coming back. We've got Arborist, Carnivorous Taro, Everflow Eidolon, Oxidant Rager, Relentless Wanderers, Shardplate Behemoth, Shroudthorn Splicer, Stegodon Alpha, and Wolfstar Djinn coming back. Few notable ones. Arborist is really cool. Relentless Wanderers and Shroudthorn Splicer coming back from the first set, I'm very excited about. But yeah, we got some really cool new ones coming, and let's get into them now. So first off, we have the Cultivating Guardian. This is a 3/4 or 3/5 plant mage that has deploy, upgrade a creature in your hand, then discard it. So a new theme in Uterra is upgrading creatures. So this is a new play space for Uterra. It actually plays into the Uterra Aloyan theme of the set, which is all around upgrading. Cultivating Guardian is our first example of this. So it's a 3/5 at level 1. At level 2, it's a 7/8. Still get to upgrade a creature and discard it. Then at level 3, it really pops off. It's a 7/10. You still get to upgrade a creature and keep it in your hand. And then the first time you upgrade a creature each turn, you may play it for free. Very cool ability. This is very reminiscent of Set 1's Aetherforge Oracle, where you have a couple different upgrades and then it does something a little bit more powerful at the end. This one allowing you to play the creature for free is fantastic. It is a little low on the stats. You're taking a 4, 3, and 10 point stat penalty across the board, but it's weighted towards health, so it gives a little bit more survivability. One thing to be noted of is that as of Rules 2.0, if you upgrade a creature before playing the level 3 version, that upgrade will not benefit from the play for free since you've already met the first time clause. So just be careful with that. But yeah, I think Cultivating Guardian, it's a common. You're going to see it a lot. I think it's going to be a big role player in the upgrade decks. And definitely a really strong one in Sealed, giving you that sort of extra plays for higher level cards. You can play the lower level version early on without taking too much of a tempo loss, and then really pop off later in the game. Next up, we have the Deep Branch Prowler. So this is a new Exalted creature. Exalted being the ability that if it's in a lane with an Exalt, friendly Exalt, you get to do whatever's after the dash in this case. So it is a 6/1 beast, and at the start of combat, you may have this strike the opposing creature, but if you do that, it doesn't deal combat damage this turn. So you have 6/1 at level 1, an 8/1 at level 2, and a 13/1 at level 3. In terms of stat penalty, you're getting a -5, -9, and -13, but if you can reliably get the Exalted Clause off, that stat penalty really doesn't matter all that much. In terms of its strengths and its weaknesses, obviously it's very, very fragile to removal. But if your opponent is very light on removal, it's very, very difficult to deal with. Another thing to note is that it's not always going to be great in terms of pushing through damage, because your opponent can easily chump block it. Giving this thing stealth or giving it breakthrough won't really help if they put something in its way. But that said, it does really control the lane that it's in. So definitely, if you have a lot of Exalt support in your deck, I think this can be a very good role player to sort of keep that, sort of forcing your opponent to spend actions and resources to get rid of this. Next up, we have the Hard Shell Beetle. This is a 5/3 beast, and while it has increased attack, it gets 3 armor. So again, we're back into that Uterra Tempest theme of increased attack. At level 1, we get a -4 stat penalty. Level 2, you get 5 armor out of it. It's an 8/5, so you have a -5 stat penalty. Level 3, you get a 12/8, 8 armor, -7 stat penalty. So if you can reliably get the increased attack, your stat penalty is not that bad. As with everything with armor, it suffers against Uterra and Necreum removal, in that a lot of both those factions have good ways of just giving minus to health directly. But yeah, it's fine. It's a common card. It doesn't do a whole lot otherwise. The armor is pretty substantial, as well as having a decent health stat beyond that at its various levels. So if you can give this thing like a +2/+2, incidentally, it can stick around pretty well. But you do have to invest multiple resources into it to make it work, which I'm always a little bit wary of, especially early in the game when you may not have easy ways of doing that without risking falling behind to removal. So yeah, it's fine. It's common. You'll see it a lot. I don't necessarily think you can build around it per se, but I think it's just fine. Next up, we have the Shepherding Willow. So another plant spirit. This one is a 3/6. At level 1, and it reads, deploy. If you have a spirit in your banished pile, you gain 3 life. At level 2, it's a 5/9. Again, deploy. If you have 2 or more spirits in the banished pile, you get 5 life. And at level 3, you get a 7/11. Activate. If you have 3 or more spirits in your banished pile, you gain 5 life. So at level 3, you start to get to start using this over and over again. It's a plant spirit itself, so it feeds into its own spirit synergy. So as long as you have one other spirit, you can get this thing to work pretty easily. Once the first level, like if you can trigger it the first time, you can pretty much trigger it for the rest of the game. Basically, the play pattern is you play a spirit, it gets banished, you play the Shepherding Willow, you get the 3 life, and then when that one dies, you now have 2 spirits for the level 2 version, and then that dies, you have 3 spirits for level 3 version. So it's very, very easy to trigger this. It does not take a lot of work. And I found, it only has like a 3, 4, and 9 point stat penalty. It's not huge for the amount of life you can gain out of it. And life gain is not as prevalent in set 3 as it was in other sets. So this is a really good way for your Terra to sort of shore up some of those life gain synergies. There's not too many in set 3, but where they count, this is a really good enabler for that. And the body's fine. It's gonna stick around. It's definitely weighted towards health. It's gonna trade up, or it's gonna be able to like catch something and then trade with it the following turn, kind of a thing. So yeah, I think it's a fine card. I'm not super disappointed to see this. I think it has a role player. It's not like gonna be a heavy hitter for your deck, but it's definitely a good role player. All right, next up we have the Torgmai Mender. So, this is a 5/3 plant spirit. It has activate, choose a creature type, give each creature of that type +1 health. At level 2, it's an 8/5, and it gives the creature types +2 health, and then at level 3, it's an 11/7, giving creatures +3 health of the chosen type. So this is an exact inverse of the Spirit Reaver, where its stats are mirrored, and what it does is mirrored. That said, I like this a lot more than I like Spirit Reaver. Getting more health onto creatures is often way more valuable than giving minus health to creatures, especially if that minus health isn't going to kill the creature. Giving plus health is going to often save your creature. So, nice thing with Torgmai Mender is it wants you to do it to itself. So at the first level, you can easily get it as just a 5/4, which is not that much of a decrease in stats. Its progression is a -4, -5, -9. Not hard to overcome, especially if you can hit multiple creatures in the same turn with the plus health bonus. It plays into spirit synergies. I've played with this card in casual and in sealed, and it can really keep your creatures on the board for a prolonged period of time and really be frustrating for an opponent if they can't get rid of it. So I love this card. I think it's really strong. I don't know so much in like high competitive how good it's going to be, especially when you have a high amount of removal and things are trading a lot more often. But in casual play and in sealed play, I think this is a great card to value and to play with. And yeah, I like it. It's giving that health bonus to your team is great, especially if you have a high concentration of creatures with the same creature type. Next up, we have the Tremorsaur. So Tremorsaur is kind of our cousin of Thundersaur. So what we're looking at is a 0/8 breakthrough creature dinosaur. When you are dealt damage, by an enemy creature, give this that much attack. At level 2, it becomes a 0/12, same ability, and at level 3, it's a 0/18, same ability. So this is a very high risk, high reward creature. It only triggers off of your opponent's creatures dealing you damage. You can't like cheat it with things like corrupt creatures or bloodletting creatures. But if you have life gain or ways to give yourself armor with sort of Aloyan abilities, you can afford to take those hits just to power this thing up to incredible levels. It's always going to be best if you can deploy it off Forge. It's very easy to play around if you play it on Forge, because your opponent can usually throw a creature in front of it to significantly damage it or take it out before it has any attack power. If you play it on Forge, but if you play it off Forge, you can usually set it up in such a way that you're taking a big hit and pumping it up right away into something that's like an Oakfather or better at level 1, and it can really go out of control at level 2 or 3. That said, if you go through all that effort of taking a bunch of damage just to pump this up and your opponent destroys it or stabilizes it the following turn, you're gonna be in for a world of hurt in that regard. So just be careful with it. Be aware of what your opponent's removal options are before you deploy this out. And I think that it can be very strong in those instances, especially if you have ways to pump it up or to increase its health to keep it on the board for longer. You can definitely make this work. But again, high risk, high reward. And our final non-forge creature we have is the Uterra Forebear. So this is a 1/1 Spirit Warrior. It says deploy, you may give another creature +2/+2, and then when this is destroyed, you may give a creature +2/+2. At level 2, it's a 3/3, gives 3/3 of stats on both deploy and destruction, and then at level 3, it's a 4/4, gives 5 attack and health and 5 attack and health on destruction. In terms of like the way this works out in stat penalty wise, you have a -10, -12, and -19 stat penalty. But in reality, what you're looking at is more like a -2, -0, +1 if you can maximize those attack and health triggers. So basically, what Uterra Forebear is asking you to do is to deploy it out, buff a creature, and sort of maybe chump block with it, or use it for some sort of Necrogram Destruction synergy to instantly pump up another one of your creatures. In that way, it's kind of like a spell more than it is a creature, and it also sort of enables those Spirits in the Banish Piles synergies. It's common, you're going to see it a lot. I think it's fine, but I think you need to be careful with when and how you're playing this, especially since the second ability suffers from the whole like fiend / malicious problem, where if you don't have another creature on the board, you're leaving a lot of stats on the table. Like if everything's trading, or this is just being chumped and your opponent's keeping creatures on the board, that extra destruction attack and health is just kind of going to waste. So yeah, I think it's fine. It functions, like I said, it functions more like a spell than it does a creature, and it has a lot of little micro synergies you can do with it. And yeah, I think it's fine. I think you just have to be careful with how you play it and when you play it. I don't think it's one of those cards that's a must play every time you draw it. It's definitely going to be board state dependent. All right, so that is our non-forged creatures. Let's take a look at our forged base creatures. And for this, let's go ahead and review what came back. We've got the Bartok, Batterhide is back. We got the Bear, the Decayosaur, Druid, Elk, Featherfang, Hunter, Lotus, Packmaster, Raptor, Slayer, Sower, and Wartusk. It's nice to see the Sower came back. There's a lot more plants in this set than previous, so I'm glad that Sower is back in the mix. But let's take a look at the new guys. So the first one up we have is the Breakwood. In this case, we're looking at the combat Breakwood. Its special ability is deploy. You may destroy a level 1 Exalt in this lane. And for that, you're taking a 3-point stat penalty. At level 2, you get to destroy a 1 or 2 Exalt in the lane. That you're taking a 5-point stat penalty. And at level 3, you're getting a destroy any Exalt in the lane. And it's a 6-point stat penalty. I think this is fine. If you're playing against an opponent with Exalts you have to get rid of. I think it's one of the few answers nowadays against really troublesome Exalts like Rumblespark Elemental. So I think, this will be a priority to level up in those decks. However, I think it's a little bit more finicky to use than I would like. The fact that you have to put it in the lane with the Exalt you want to destroy can make it awkward, especially if your opponent is playing their Exalts opposite your own creatures to begin with. Meaning that, like, if you really have to get rid of that Exalt, you're going to have to drop it. You're going to have to do, like, a replacement to get that off. And it also sort of forces you to keep on curve with it. Like, you have to play it to make sure that you're going to hit those higher level Exalts since it is level gated. So it's going to be good against like a high, like a opponent that has a lot of Exalts because they're spending those actions to play the Exalts and you get to basically take them out for free. But if you're playing up against an opponent with only 1 or 2 Exalts, or they have a lot of set 1 that they're playing, it's going to be just an understated creature you're not really going to want to play. Next up, we have the Ether Hound. So it is a beast spirit, so we got our spirit synergies going on, and if this replaced a creature, it gets +2 health and you gain 2 health. In terms of stat penalty, you're taking 1 point at the first level. Second level, you're going to get 3 health and 3 life. If you do a replacement, you're only taking a 2-point stat penalty for that. And at level 3, you're getting a 3-point stat penalty, and you're getting 5 health and 5 life out of it. So if you have reason to do the replacement, say you're in a Loyan and you're doing replacement synergy stuff, it's definitely going to work pretty well. There's also a modifier we'll talk about later that's especially good with if you have both in your deck. You actually are up a little bit on stats if you do the replacement, but that said, it's not that far off from a combat creature, so you're not really losing. I mean, it's not that far off from a tactician, I should say. In terms of its base stats, so you're not really putting much on the table for if you don't do the replacement. So I think it's fine. I think it's a good common. Depending on the modifier you get on it, it could be really, really strong. And yeah, I think it's fine. It's just kind of a simple creature. It's one of the few replacement synergy cards in Uterra. Like that replacement was a pretty big theme in Uterra in the first 2 sets. Now it's kind of gone a little bit by the wayside, but it's nice to see at least 1 or 2 creatures that came back with that effect. Next up we have the Mastodon. So this is a plant dinosaur that has an interesting progression. At level 1 you're taking a 5-point stat penalty, but when you deploy it, if you have another creature with increased attack, you get +3/+3. So you're actually up 1 stat if you can make it work. Level 2, if you have another creature with increased attack, you give a +3/+3, but this time it's an activate. So you don't just do it on deploy, you get to activate that. So you do take a stat penalty, but you get to quickly make that up, especially if you can do it in back-to-back turns. You're going to be well above curve on the Mastodon. And then at level 3, it just goes crazy. You have activate, give this +3/+3 for each creature you have in play with increased attack. That includes itself. So once you can activate it once, it just goes completely bonkers. If you're playing in a deck that can go both tall and wide, and has effects things like Ferocious Roar, or other sort of mass attack pumping abilities, this thing can get really out of hand really, really fast. Much faster than something like I would say it's on par with a threat of like a kindred creature or a Taro in the quickness of how quickly this thing can get out of hand if you're playing with it. If you can get to level 3, that is to say. There are some really cool modifiers you can get with it. Roaring is a fantastic one to get with it. You just give another creature some attack and health, and that automatically fulfills its deploy or activate clause. So I like this with Roaring. It can be good with attack as an ability as well. It just sort of supercharges it on the first level. So yeah, look for really cool sort of modifiers on the Mastodon. It's also a plant dinosaur, so like it benefits from plant synergies too. So I think it has sort of this really cool Venn diagram of what it's working with. So yeah, I definitely like the Mastodon, especially if I have ways to increase attack. It's going to be best paired with either Aloyan or Tempest. And yeah, just very cool card. Also love Mastodon instead of Mastodon. It's just really, really cool little play on words there. Next up, we have the Tusk Mage. So this is ability has, when you upgrade a card, give this +2 health, +3 health, and +5 health whenever you upgrade a card. Very simple ability. The stat penalty you're getting is -2, -3, -5, which is identical to the scaling on the upgrade effect. It's weighted towards health, so this is the kind of creature that is going to stick around longer. And depending on what modifier you get with it, it can be very, very strong. There's one specific ability modifier we'll talk about soon that lets you upgrade every turn, so this can just keep growing and growing, especially if it has the modifier directly on it. That said, if you don't have a lot of ways to upgrade in your deck, you'll have at least one because of the algorithm. But if you don't have a lot of ways to upgrade this in your deck, it's gonna probably be a little bit of an understated creature that may not stick around as long as you'd like. But if you can consistently upgrade every turn, this thing can stick around on the board for a really long time. It's also a mage, which can be relevant for some mage synergies in either Tempest or Aloyan. And our final non-forged creature is the Wild Man. And this is our other exalted creature, and it just reads, if it has exalted, it has breakthrough. At level 1, you're right on curve. You got your 12 points. At level 2, you lose 1 point of stats. And at level 3, you lose 1 point of stats, both on the health. I think this is totally fine if you get the right modifier for it. You definitely want modifiers that is going to keep its attack up to really maximize that breakthrough. And you're going to need to have the exalts out there. But that said, it doesn't have that much of a stat penalty. So even if you can't make the exalted part of it work, it's still a totally fine play, especially with the right modifier on it. So, if with the wrong modifier on it, it's going to be a very, very bad card. With the right modifier on it, it's going to be a really fine, just sort of combat beater in your deck. Simple ability, not much to talk about. Let's move on to our Forge modifiers. So, coming back, we have the Ardent, Arrogant, Biting, Combat, Ferocious, Noxious, Pack, Regenerating, Roaring, Spiky, Stout, Toxic, and Venerable. You'll notice missing from that list is Kindred, which was one of the most popular from set 1 and 2. That said, there's not a lot of life gain synergy going on in this set, so it's fine that we don't see that mucking up the algorithm. So our first new modifier in Uterra is Haunting. We went over this in Necrium, but all it does is it gives the creature the spirit subtype. You lose 1 health at the first level, but otherwise it just follows the combat modifier progression. Not going to reiterate, it's basically just a way to get extra spirits in your banish pile. Let's move on to something that's much more exciting with spirits in the Inspirited modifier. So this reads deploy. You may replace this with another level 1 spirit in your banish pile. If you do, give it +1/+1. So this lets you reanimate a spirit and give it a little bit of a stat bonus essentially. Level 2, you're getting a 1 or 2 spirit. Again, it's level gated, but you have +2/+2. And then at level 3, it gives any spirit you reanimate +4/+4. Now for that, it is important to note that you're losing 4 stats, 6 stats, and 10 stats for that ability. So what does that mean? Inspirited is a card you do not want to play if you do not have spirits you want to bring back. Its stats are going to fall off really, really fast, and there's nothing about its text that will make up for that stat loss on the creature. Right? Most of the time, when you have an ability and you're sacrificing stats for it, it's a stat that will affect the board. These stats are an opportunity cost to having that ability to bring something back with increased attack and health as like basically a reanimation effect. You're not losing too much at level 1, but it really starts to hurt at level 2 and 3 if you don't have a reliable way to bring back a spirit you actually care about. If you have things like Hantu or Echo Wolves or other like really cool spirits that are worth bringing back, absolutely prioritize playing this to bring back a spirit and give it that bonus. But if you don't, I would absolutely ignore this card altogether if the spirits you have in your deck have nothing, are on the weaker side and aren't really ones you're going to want to spend actions on playing in the first place. That said, it does also work really nice with some replacement effects, like we were talking about the Aetherhound earlier. You know, reanimating an Aetherhound, or you're not technically reanimating, you're replacing the Aetherhound on top of the Inspirited Creature, so you both get the bonus of the attack and health, and the bonus from the Aetherhound getting some extra health and life for you. There's also some really cool ones that it can be paired with, like Bartok or Druid, where they have an extra deploy ability that will help you beyond just the Inspirited effect, right? Because the creature that you're gonna this Inspirited creature is gonna get replaced, so any other deploy abilities that you have on it that will affect the board in other ways are gonna be great to make up for the fact that the creature's going away. Yeah, Inspirited, very cool. It is a rare modifier, so you won't see it as much, but if you get a deck with multiple in this and you have the right spirit pairing, I think it could be really, really punishing for your opponent to keep bringing back that same spirit over and over again. Next up, we have Naturalizing. So this is just deploy, and an enemy creature loses all printed abilities this turn. So basically, it's Leyline Vermin as a modifier. For level 1, 2, and 3 across the board, you're just losing 2 attack. Now, unlike Leyline Vermin at the 3rd level, it's still a deploy ability. It does not become an activate ability. That said, I do like that they brought this sort of blanking of abilities back in set 3. It was kind of it was noticeably absent from Battle for White Fang Pass, and I think it's a really good place for Uterra to play as part of its identity of blanking creatures' abilities or doing things like Botanimate effects where you replace creatures with wisps. That's very much in the wheelhouse of Uterra, so it's nice to see them bringing that back in this set. So yeah, Naturalizing, you're not taking a huge stat penalty. You can really turn something off, like an important utility creature off for your opponent, or shut down something like Breakthrough or Stealth. And yeah, I think it's fine role player. I don't mind the little bit of a stat loss on it for having access to this ability in my deck. Next up, we have the Prevailing modifier. So this one gives the creature Defender, and then at the end of your turn, you may upgrade a creature in your hand, then discard it. At level 2, you get, again, it still has Defender. You get to upgrade a card and discard it. And then at level 3, you get to actually play a creature for free from your hand. So you're taking a 2-point, 2-point, and 5-point stat penalty. Not that big a deal for having all this added bonus of upgrading cards turn after turn. It does give the creature Defender, which is both a boon and a bane, depending on what creature it's on. And it's going to turn that creature into a non-threat for your opponent, but it also protects the prevailing creature, especially if you get it on something that you have like an activate ability, or it just has another sort of static ability that you want to keep going turn after turn. This is the ability I was talking about with the Tusk Mage, which if you can get this on a Tusk Mage, the Tusk Mage will just keep on growing and growing and sitting in the back and just functioning to clog up a lane and upgrade your cards. So definitely look out for Prevailing Tusk Mages. Very cool modifier combination to get. Other ones that could be good with this would probably be things like the Packmaster, which you want to keep on the board for longer. There's not a whole lot in Uterra directly that has any activate abilities that you'd want to sort of pair with this, but there's definitely Betrayers that you can get with this that could be pretty nuts to get that Defender ability. So yeah, keep an eye out for Prevailing. Definitely a role player in those upgrade synergy decks, and not too unhappy to see it since it doesn't really hurt the stats all that much. You can clog up a lane, take out a blocker, catch something, that kind of stuff. Next up, we have Spring Bloom. So this basically kind of replaced Soothing from the first two sets, and it reads, deploy, give each player gains 2 health. Level 1, you're taking a 2-point stat penalty for that. At level 2, it's each player gains 3 health, but you actually get a 2-point stat bonus for doing that. So you actually get something that's above curve. Then at level 3, each player gains 5, and you take a 1-point stat penalty to the toughness. So interesting progression. It's kind of like a little bit stronger in the middle. Not too much of a stat penalty at the beginning. I believe with Soothing, you took a pretty big hit at level 1. So yeah, it's fine. Again, there's not a huge amount of life gain stuff going on in the last winter. It's basically like Arborist and Carnivorous Taro are the only really life gain payoff type cards in the set. But if you have like a Necreum half that cares a lot about life gain, or some like Betrayers, like a Betrayer Swamp Moss or something, it could be good. It's one of those cards that's a little bit of a double-edged sword. You got to be careful if your opponent is playing a life gain strategy themselves, because this just helps them with that. Getting the stats on the body will help you negate some of that life gain that they're getting out of it. But you have to kind of want it more than they do, I should say, to get that life gain proc. But yeah, it's fine. The stats are just sort of on curve, nothing too big. And you just get sort of a little bit of life buffer throughout the progression. Finally, we have Uprising. So Uprising reads, if this creature would gain attack, it gets that amount plus 2 instead. For that, you're taking a 2-point stat penalty. Level 2, it's if it would gain attack, it gets 3 additional attack. And then at level 4, you take a 3-point stat penalty for doing that. And level 4, you get, if this would gain attack, it gets that amount plus 4 instead. And you're taking a 7-point stat penalty for that. Frankly, I think this is a terrible ability. It does not scale nearly as hard as it needs to make up for the stat penalty you're getting out of it. I go back to how good is this on an empty board? How good is it at different points in the game? You're taking a 2-point stat penalty. You get that back if you get the increased attack. But then it sort of says, hey, you need to do this multiple times to really get a lot out of it. So, you only need to trigger it once to be on par on the first 2 levels. By the time you get to level 3, you have to trigger it twice before you get any sort of bonus out of it, really, over just having like a combat creature or some similarly statted vanilla stat buff, right? So it's basically saying, like, I need to both use my pump spells on this, and I need to keep it around long enough for that stat attack bonus to actually matter. If it said something like, I don't know, like if at the 3rd level it like doubled the amount it gave to the creature, or maybe it gave it attack and health instead of just attack, like that would be really cool. It could be something like if it would gain attack, it gets that much health as well, and that kind of a thing. Like I could see that being really cool, but like as it stands, it's pretty mediocre. Now there's like a couple creatures you can get it with that it might be cool. The Featherfang comes to mind, and the Packmaster come to mind, where they sort of self-proc these attack synergies. But other than that, I just think you're paying a lot for this ability. If your creature doesn't survive more than 1 or 2... So, like, in normal gameplay, if your creature's not surviving more than 1 or 2 turns, it doesn't really do anything. And if you think about just even, like, in sealed play or in just sort of normal gameplay, where you're playing a game of catch, where you and your opponent are catching each other's creatures, or like blocking, and it's taking some damage, increasing its health, or its attack, that kind of thing. By the time you do the second block, it's probably going to go off the board, and that attack that it gained isn't going to like be the difference between whether it killed the opposing creature or not. So I think you're sort of taking a huge opportunity cost for this card, and I really don't like Uprising as a modifier, and I'm not terribly happy to see it in my deck. So I think they could have done a lot with this to make it more interesting. At the very least, at the 3rd level, maybe not give it any sort of stat penalty at all. It's just all upside, so that that risk that you're taking early on makes it worth it. But as it stands, yeah, not that great of an ability. Next up, we have our spells to look at. And coming back, we have Botanimate, Dendrify, Druid's Chant, Ferocious Roar, and Spirit Charm. So just like the other factions, we're getting 5 spells back and a whole slew of new spells. So let's take a look. Our first new spell is Cherished Shrine. So this is an Exalt. It reads deploy, give a creature 4 armor this turn, and then activate. If you have 1 or more spirits in your banish pile, give a creature in this lane 2 armor this turn. At level 2, it destroys the level 1 version. You get 8 armor this turn to a creature, and the activate becomes 4 armor for having 2 or more spirits. And at level 3, destroy the earlier versions. You get 12 armor the turn you play it, and if you have 3 or more spirits, you get to activate to give the creature in the lane 6 armor this turn. I like this card quite a bit, especially in sealed play. A lot of things to note. So first couple things to note about this. 1, the deploy ability does not have to give the armor to the creature in the same lane. You can put this in one lane, give a creature in a different lane the +4 armor, and if you have a spirit in the banish pile, you get to give a creature in its lane 2 armor. So you can spread sort of 6 armor around the first turn you play it, if you already have that spirit in the banish pile. 2, the activate gives you value turn after turn. Like once you've got the spirit in the banish pile, you're gonna keep fulfilling the requirement as it goes on. So I think this is one of those cards that really kind of shows how bad Shield Node was in Battle for Aething Pass. You get the same sort of deploy armor progression. You get that 4 armor when you first play it, but it doesn't have to be in the same lane, right? So you don't have that awkward situation where you put like the shield node in a lane, save the creature, but then you can't trigger the shield node again until you get that creature out of the lane. Like this is gonna just protect a creature turn after turn. It becomes a little weaker when you're off Forge, like when you start off, rather when you're on Forge and you play this, and then the following turn you're off Forge. You have this little sort of window where your shields are down, so to speak, where you can't activate it before your opponent can sort of direct damage your creature. But the advantage too is that you can play this in a lane, and give that creature the sort of double armor bonus, and then just keep sort of protecting it turn after turn. It becomes sort of like a pseudo refreshable armor situation, right? And yeah, even though I'm always sort of down on armor, I think this kind of effect is nice in terms of like protecting a single combat, and you have a little bit of control over when you activate it. So yeah, I think it's fine. It's great as a common. It's great for the Spirit Synergy decks. And it's not super flashy, but I think it can give you a lot of board position, especially when you're talking about 1 or 2 points of damage being the difference between keeping your creature on the board or not. So I think it's definitely worth the action it costs to play it. Next up, we've got the Fertile Ground. So this is our energy exalt for Uterra, or one of them, rather. It reads deploy, give it 2 energy counters, and then activate, remove an energy counter from this to play a Wisp minion in the lane, and then destroy it if there's no energy. Level 2, you get to play a level 1 creature from using the activate, and at level 2, you get to play a 1 or 2 creature from the activate. Again, as I've said before, I will say it again, these energy counter exalts are bonkers. I think Fertile Ground is significantly weaker than River of Souls, but I think they are on par when you're talking about pairing them with things like savants, like Dark Shaper or Flame Shaper Savant. The fact that you can throw this out to use like the Wisps for replacement synergies or self-destruction synergies. It gives you fodder for those effects. And, being able to time playing extra free creatures later on should not be underestimated. Again, getting 2 free level 1 creatures from 1 level 2 play is definitely going to put you ahead in terms of actions and the sort of stats you're throwing onto the board. So definitely don't underestimate Fertile Ground. I think it's strong, but the first level is a little lackluster. Getting the Wisps, if you don't have a way to really maximize using those Wisps for other effects in your deck, like I said, like with either minion synergies or pairing it with things like Dark Shaper Savant or having some sort of like replacement synergy, like that's a little bit of a heavy hit. But once you get to the second level, you're golden. It'll catch you up on all those level 1 creatures that you missed in the first cycle. And yeah, can't speak highly enough about Fertile Ground. Next up, we have another Energy Exalt from Uterra, and a much more lackluster one, in my opinion. You get the 2 energy counters when you play it. You remove an energy counter to give a creature in this lane 2 attack, and then if it's level 1, it gets Breakthrough. Level 2, you get 4 attack, and if it's level 1 or 2, it gets Breakthrough, and at level 3, you get 8 attack if it gets Breakthrough, regardless of its level. So, Lycian Shard is a very, very fringe playable card. I think it's kind of mediocre in the amount of stats you're getting out of it. Like, you get 4, and then 8, and then 16 altogether. You can get Breakthrough if it's on the right level creature. I understand why it's level gated, because you don't want to, like, just have the ability to throw this down for the first time on cycle 3 and just push through a bunch of damage with the Breakthrough clause on some massive creature where you didn't put in the work to put the shard out to begin with. But it still makes it very limited in how strong it can be. So if you're not able to really benefit from that attack clause, like with the sort of Uterra Tempest thing, I feel like it's a very risky play to spend your action on this card. If you have ways to maybe upgrade past the first couple levels, I can see the 3rd level being fine as a sort of a haymaker finisher in the 3rd cycle. But I'm not super impressed with it. I've never really played it and felt good about it. So I'm sure there's like definitely strategies and aggro strategies where it can be good. But the vast majority of the time, and just for my playstyle, I don't really particularly care for the Lycian Shard. Next up, we have Might of Trees. So, this is another upgrade card. It reads, you may play a Wisp minion, then upgrade a creature and discard it. Level 2, you get an Oak Father. You get to upgrade a creature and discard it. And then level 3, you get an Oak Father again, but you get to upgrade and play the creature for free. So this is kind of akin to Energy Surge from Aloyan. You're getting a sort of a weaker, debatably weaker minion out of it and a more restrictive upgrade out of it than Energy Surge. So I do like the flexibility of Energy Surge a little bit better, but at level 2, that Oak Father is probably a little bit more meaningful than the Mega Gizmo if you don't have an immediate way to replace. And the breakthrough on the Oak Father can be pretty scary. But yeah, I like this as sort of a enabler for those upgrade synergy decks that really need sort of a high density of upgrade cards to make them work. And yeah, I think Might of Trees is fine. You know, it is a little bit of a tempo loss at the very first level, because just throwing a single Wisp out is not that exciting, but hopefully the creature you're upgrading will more than make up for that. Next up, we get Nature's Progression. So this is give a creature +4 attack and +2 health, and then upgrade a creature card. So another spell for upgrading creatures. Level 2, you get +6, +4. Upgrade a creature and discard it, and then level 3, it is free. You get that +6, +4, and you upgrade the creature and keep it in your hand. So it goes pretty nuts by the time you get to level 3 here. I think it's totally fine. I mean, you know, +3/+3 is kind of like, you know, +3/+3, and I guess this is sort of like +5/+5 akin. So it's like on curve for these type of effects. We're usually through like +3/+3, +5/+5 kind of a thing. It's a little, you know, attack heavy, so it doesn't as well provide for keeping your creature a little bit more survivable in that regard. But you know, keeping a creature on the board and getting a free upgrade, definitely not a spell I'm unhappy to play with. And you know, it becomes free at the 3rd level, so I am a big proponent of free cards. Always going to be good if you can get the free ability out of it. Alright, next up we have Overgrown. So this is kind of our replacement to Taliesin and Reveler, neither of which came back, but what we get out of this is the enemy player may play up to 2 level 1 creatures and or exalts for free, then you do the same, and you gain 3 life. At level 2, it's again level gated. They get to play 2 level 1 or 2 exalts, and you get to play 2 level 1 or 2 exalts, gain 3 life again. But at level 3, you are the only one that gets to play those things for free. You still gain the life. It definitely pushes you ahead. This is a very cool card, and it's definitely best played off Forge. to reduce the number of good targets your opponent can play. Obviously, you don't have any control over whether you play it on or off Forge. That said, I'd probably save this as my second play in the turn as much as possible to get the most information out of my opponent before I decide what I'm going to play. It's especially strong when your opponent has a pretty full board and you do not, because it makes it a little bit more awkward for them to like get into a situation where they have to start replacing things, especially if they have no Exalt in their deck, like they're playing a set 1 deck. You get those sort of extra slots to put things out. And like I said, at level 3, it just, getting extra stuff for free is always nice, and this really powers that out and can really shift the tide in your favor. The health gain part of it is kind of negligible. Again, there aren't that many health gain synergies in the last winter, so it's like sort of a little bit of gives you a little bit of a bonus there, but it still costs you your action. You're giving your opponent 2 free cards for your 2 free cards. So you just gotta be careful with how you play this. And yeah, so Overgrown, cool card, definitely like it. In the right deck, and it can really it's one of those really neat little sort of mind games for your opponent. Whether you're gonna play it or not, how should they sequence their hand, that kind of stuff. So definitely try it out. As of this recording, it is still bugged in the app, so not a lot of people are playing it, but once that gets corrected, I can see a lot of really fun Overgrown decks being played. Next up, we have the Predatory Attack, and this is kind of our replacement to Vinelash. So at level 1, it reads, one of your creatures battles an enemy creature. If your creature survives, give it +5 health. At level 2, one of your creatures battles an enemy creature. If your creature survives, give it 7 health, and you may battle another creature. At level 3, you get that +7 health attack bonus at the beginning. You battle an enemy creature. If it survives, you get another 7 health and battle again. This card I think is fantastic. I really like this a lot more than Vinelash for 2 reasons. One, the way it progresses, like Vinelash, it was basically battle, strike 1, and then strike 2 creatures. This one goes battle, give it some health, so already better than Vinelash at level 1. At level 2 is you start to be able to hit 2 things for 1 card. You play it, you battle a creature, give the creature 7 health because conceivably it survives, and then you get to hit another thing. You don't get to do the strike effect, but you do get to have much bigger impact on the board. Worst case scenario, you just battle 1 creature and you get that extra health bonus anyway to negate some of the damage the creature took. Level 3, it just +14 health to a creature and it battles 2 creatures. Yeah, it's a little finicky, like the way it's worded, it has to survive the first hit, but +14 health is a lot, and taking out 2 creatures is a lot. So it just can really, really swing the board in your favor. Also, just like Uterra Charger, which again did not come back, you can hit the same creature multiple times on the 1st and 2nd level ability. Like, you don't have to battle a different enemy creature. So, like, if your opponent has like a high health but low attack creature that you just have to get rid of, you can just strike it twice, or battle it twice with your creature, just to get it off the board. So, definitely like Predatory Attack. Definitely like the fact that at the 2nd level you start being able to hit multiple targets with it and taking out multiple threats. It just makes that much more compelling of a card compared to Vinelash, and I am not unhappy to see this card in my deck. I'm a little disappointed that it's rare, because it's one of the few removal effects that Uterra got back, but definitely a cool card, and do not hesitate to play with it. Next up, we have the Preserved Habitat Exalt. So this reads, deploy, upgrade a creature in your hand, then discard it. And when you upgrade a card, give your creature in this lane +3/+3. Level 2, it destroys its lower level, and same thing, you get to upgrade a creature and discard it. Each time you upgrade, you get +4/+4 to the creature. And then level 3, you get to upgrade the creature in your hand, destroy your level 1 and 2, and then every time you upgrade, you get +6/+6 to the creature. This is a really awesome card in an upgrade synergy deck. It's an okay card if your deck isn't really focused around upgrades, like it doesn't have too many ways to upgrade cards. But it's a great pump spell. You just drop it in the lane of the creature you want to pump, and then, you know, it's in the lane for when that discard deploy or that upgrade deploy effect goes off, and you get the +3/+3 right off the bat. So sometimes this can be a little bit awkward. You do have to sort of commit your creature to the board before you play this. And your opponent is kind of incentivized to keep the lane clear. So, like, if they can keep the creature off the board and you have to put the creature in the lane, then you're kind of committed to having your second play be an upgrade effect, and that sort of limits your second play on the turn. So, like, it can create some awkward play patterns, but if you compare this with something like a Synapse creature, or sometimes even like a Necromancer, where you get sort of like repeated upgrade over every turn, you can get your creature to go kind of out of control. It's great with like prevailing creatures. You generally don't want to put the prevailing creature in this lane, because all you've basically done is lock up that lane. Since it's defender, your opponent doesn't have to worry about that creature. But yeah, I think it's a great role player. You don't even really need to play the second and third level of it, to be honest. And you could just focus on using other ways to upgrade cards. There's not much of a scaling in the second level. You only get an extra +1/+1 per upgrade at the second level, but +6/+6 is pretty scary. So definitely I keep on the lookout for this. Maybe like upgrade past the second level if you're playing a Loyan or Necrium. But yeah, definitely give this a try. I think it's a card that you can kind of base your deck around. But if you do that, you're always at the risk that you don't draw it. And if all your deck is doing is upgrading, it's hard to just win that way. You have to have another game plan. Like, upgrading in and of itself is not enough. This is sort of a payoff for that. But if you don't draw it, and that's really the only reason you're upgrading, then you're gonna be in trouble by the second or third cycle. And our final spell that has joined us is the Shaman's Channeling. So this reads, give a creature +6 attack. If you have a spirit in your banish pile, you may give one of your creatures breakthrough this turn. Notably, you do not have to give the creature you gave the attack the breakthrough. You can split it up. Level 2, you get +8 attack. You need 2 spirits to give 2 of your creatures breakthrough this turn. And then level 3, you get 12 attack. And then if you have 3 or more spirits, you give all of your creatures breakthrough this turn. So this is kind of like a weird card, in my opinion. It doesn't improve the survivability of the creature. You're only getting attack. So either you're like trading up and hopefully your creature's surviving, or you're just playing it as a way to sort of push through damage. The nice thing is the breakthrough is not level gated, so you can wait to use this as sort of like a finisher card late in the second or third cycle, with just having a spirit and a quick way to give breakthrough. To be honest, I probably would rather have something like Feral Instinct than this, where you're guaranteed to get the breakthrough. Yeah, the stat attack is not as much, but you get a free card out of it. The scaling between levels 1 and 2 is a little awkward. You get 6 attack versus 8 attack. Then you get another 12 attack. I think it may have been they probably could have been a little bit more generous with that, or given some way of giving it survivability, but it's fine. It's good for upgrade attack or increased attack synergies. It's good as sort of like a haymaker push through some final damage kind of ability. But again, you have to be careful. I would much rather be playing this off Forge while I have a front row creature, as like to prevent my opponent from being able to interact with it, versus just throwing this out on Forge and hoping that my creature survives. So yeah, just gotta be careful with it. It's fine as a common. You're going to have a spirit in your deck to trigger it. And yeah, it's an okay card. Don't mind it too much. Alright, and finally we come to our Soulbinds. So, we have 2 that return, Echo Wolves and Shard King. Both totally fine Uterra Soulbinds. But let's see what our new ones are. We've got the... first up is the Enduring Ties. So level 1, it just reads play Rooted Leafkin. Okay, no big deal. We'll see what that is in just a second. At level 2, you choose one, play Rooted Leafkin, and give it +1/+1, or set your Rooted Leafkin's attack to 5 and its health to 3. Or you get to play an Ingrained Leafkin or transform the Rooted Leafkin. Okay, so let's look at what these are. Rooted Leafkin is a plant spirit. It is a 4/2, and it says this can't gain health except by Enduring Ties. Why does it say that? Because it also says if this would lose any amount of health, instead it only loses 1 health. So what does that mean? Basically, it's going to take 2 spells or 2 combats to get rid of this. No matter how much attack your opponent's creature has, they cannot kill it with 1 attack phase, because it'll survive at 1 health after the first one. Second one, it's going to die. You can't really help keep it alive, right? You can't pump it except through that spell ability. But it has some interesting interactions. So, it doesn't die to like Necroam minus health effects immediately. It still just counts as 1 hit to his toughness. It does disable breakthrough, like all of it. It absorbs all the breakthrough damage, since it can't lose more than 1 health. So it's a great sort of like counter to Krogius in a way, if you can line it up that way. It's also good against sort of like those Dark Forge Drain Oakfather decks, where you throw it in front of the Oakfather so that if they Dark Forge Drain it, you can't get sort of one shot out of nowhere. That said, it still can die to things like Dreadbolt or Botanimate. The upgraded version is an 8/4, so it takes much longer to get rid of it. So you're going to take 4 hits at level 3. Because of the way it's worded on level 2, you're going to get basically 3 hits. It's a 5/3 at level 2. Yeah, it's interesting. It's not very attack heavy, so it's a really good blocker. I mean, it's kind of almost like an Indomitable Fiend at level 1, to be honest. It's going to survive 1 combat and then die the next. Another thing to be aware of, I was mentioning Necroam having the minus X type effects. Well, yeah, they can't kill it, but the attack's going to go away too, so it's really not much of a threat or much of a speed bump at that point. So there's a lot of sort of counterplay to this card. But, even if you give it plus attack plus health things, you still get the plus attack on it. It's interesting. I haven't played with it too much. I actually don't own one yet. And I haven't really seen it out in the wild to see like how good it can be. So it's curious. I think this actually might be an interesting card to work with armor as well. Like if you can get armor that exceeds the attack of a creature that's about to hit it, that gives you just 1 extra turn of it around. So yeah, interesting card. Have yet to see how it's going to play out in Constructed. But yeah, it definitely is going to stick around. It's very hard to deal with. There's very few abilities in the game that just will nuke this from out of orbit and get around that minus health clause, since most removal in the game is based around some sort of damage or health effect. Finally, our last soulbind is Stegos Dinosaur Tamer. So Stegos is a 2/4 warrior at level 1. It says you may play a Uterra pup, and then has the activated ability, give your dinosaurs +2 attack. So what's the pup? It is a 1/3 dinosaur. So basically, when you first play this, you basically get a 2/4 and a 3/3 out of the deal. Totally fine for a level 1 card, especially with a repeated activate ability. Level 2, you get the Pterodon pup again, and you get to activate to give your dinosaurs +2/+2. He's only a 3/5 at that point, still kind of frail, but you do get 2 3/5s the first turn you play him. And then level 3, you get a 5/7. You get to play the Ridgeback, which is a 4/4 with breakthrough. And his activate ability gives your dinosaurs +4/+4. So I think it's a fine card. It's self-enabling. It gives you that dinosaur to pump up, so it's fine in that regard. But in order for this card to really shine, you need other dinosaurs. And there's not a lot of dinosaurs in set 3. Dinosaurs kind of took a backbench to things like spirits and other creature types. In fact, in Uterra, there are only 8 other dinosaurs, excluding Shard King, since the Soulbind, you can't get them in the same deck. And that's out of 35 non-betrayer creatures. So it's like a 1 in every 4 creatures, about 1 in every 4 creatures you could get in your deck could be a dinosaur. So having more than 1 or 2 other dinosaurs in a Stegos deck is not that common. So you're going to really rely on having a good 10-piece half that has a high concentration of dinosaurs. And there's only 3 10-piece dinosaurs in set 3, so it's going to have to be a set 1 or 2 deck to pair this with. So that said, I feel like Stegos is kind of out of place in this set. There's not really any sort of dinosaur synergies or payoffs. This would have made a lot more sense in Battle for White Fang Pass, where there was a lot more dinosaur stuff going on. But it's a fine self-contained card. It's very frail at level 3, so it's gonna be hard to give that Ridgeback a bunch of attack and health turn over turn. It's almost like a druid at level 3 sometimes. Like, you know, the druid, you get to put out an Oakfather level 3. You're basically getting an Oakfather's worth of stats for your dinosaur. It's okay. It's an okay soulbind. It's not within the algorithm. It does not require you having other dinosaurs to see it, so it can be in itself in a deck without any other dinosaurs. So yeah, it feels a little out of place. I don't think Uterra got like any sort of crazy soulbinds this go around. But like I said, I do like that Echo Wolves is back with the Spirit synergy. Shard King is just a fine sort of breakthrough synergy kind of card that's really cool. And then we got the Stegos and the Enduring Tides to round us out. So overall, okay. But yeah, that is Uterra in terms of the last winter. I think Uterra did okay in this set. Like I said earlier, I love the fact that they're giving it more of an identity with those sort of the naturalizing modifiers, or that, like, you know, deactivating creatures kind of a thing. I like they moved away from life gain as a synergy. I think that was just way too dominant in the first 2 sets. It's nice to see them sort of moving away from that as a build around. It makes the design space a lot more interesting. And it lets the meta evolve. Hopefully we'll be able to start seeing more in set 4. We'll see some other interesting sort of built themes between the different factions. But yeah, I think Uterra is probably a little bit weaker than it was, which is not a bad thing. Uterra has been kind of on top for a while with Necrium. So yeah, that will conclude our last winter review for Uterra. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Please leave a comment. I'd love to know your thoughts on some of these cards, how you feel about them. I know there's a lot of really cool ones that they put in here. But in terms of Uterra, I don't think there's like anything that really pushed Uterra over the top. I think I'd almost say it became more of a support color than it having its own, like, sort of like being the dominant color for a faction pairing. So anyway, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Again, leave a comment so I know that you are enjoying it, and I will keep producing these. I'll see you guys for the next episode of Metasight.